Japanese culture is one of the most curious cultures in the world. Built over the centuries with the arrival of various waves of migration from all over the Asian continent, the Japanese and their culture have gradually been shaped into what we know today. A perfect combination of religion, language, architecture, traditions, activities and celebrations, international relations, and above. All respect for one's superiors and one's country are some of the curiosities that attract our attention when we think of the Eastern country that is most open to the world and at the same time has more secrets to discover. What can we say about Japanese culture? What are its curiosities? Japanese culture today is everything that encompasses the way the people of this country live, the way they relate to each other, and the way they view the world. Because Japan is made up of many islands in the Pacific Ocean off the coast of China and many other countries with very different cultures. It has absorbed nuances from all of them to become the millennium Japan we all know. We cannot deny that the Japanese country is strongly influenced by the Chinese culture, one of the most influential countries in all Asian customs. This culture is much older with more than 2,700 years, and on which of the most important pillars in Japan are based, such as language, religion, gastronomy and celebrations. However, in recent years, Japan has been strongly connected to the rest of the world, especially to the most powerful countries in Europe, which has given it a very different point of view from other Asian countries. Today, Japan is a very westernized country, although we can clearly see the rooted Japanese culture in it. The name Japan comes from the Chinese language. In Japanese, it is said Nippon or Nihon. These two symbols mean sun and root, and together they translate as the origin of the sun, since it is well known that Japan is the land of the rising sun. On the Japanese flag, we can see exactly this symbol, with a large bright red sun on a white background. When we say that Japanese culture is very different from Western culture, we don't have to go back thousands of years to see these differences. Today, the Japanese have different ways of being that may shock many of us. The inhabitants of the Japanese land are always governed by duty as a basis of education, called yuri, which makes them respect their country as a group of people, very different from the individualistic relationships that exist in other countries. While a Japanese may have a more relaxed relationship with his family and closest friends, his relationship with his superiors at work is extremely formal. There is also a great deal of respect for elders and ancestors, with behavior that may shock us at first, but is perfectly understandable when you experience it up close. Although Japan is a small country, it is impressive how many Japanese there are around the world. It is no wonder that Japanese is the 9th most spoken language in the world, especially in recent years as Japan has opened its doors to international trade relations with major countries. This complex language is difficult at first, but those who learn it admit that it is not as difficult as it seems. What can be complicated is the Japanese script, which is composed of pictograms called kanji, katana and hiragana, which are of Chinese origin, with some changes that have occurred during the evolution of the country until today. In Japan, there are more and more young people who speak English and are interested in other languages for international relations with other great powers. However, not everyone in this country speaks a language other than their own, or they're so embarrassed that they will not speak to you openly. If you are traveling to Japan, you may have no problem communicating with the Japanese, but it never hurts to know some basic Japanese vocabulary to say hello or thank you. These most commonly used words and phrases are sure to come in handy in your daily life in any city in Japan, but if you want to learn more Japanese, you can always spend a little more time on them. It's not that difficult. The influence of different countries has brought several religions to Japan, which today coexist in harmony. Although, a few decades ago, the customs of Japan revolved more around religion. Today, the younger Japanese men and women do not profess any particular religion, although all continue to participate in some way in the culture and traditions. The major religions in Japan are Buddhism, Shintoism, Christianity and Judaism. Buddhism was one of the cultural contributions that came from China. it is still one of the major religions today, with new temples and some that are more than 1,000 years old. Another religion that existed in Japanese society before Buddhism is Shintoism. The two have merged over the centuries to create traditions in Japan that will have nothing to do with the roots of either religion. This religion mainly worship animals and nature in a purer form. Finally, it is worth mentioning the importance that Christianity has today throughout the country. Brought by missionaries centuries ago, we can find temples in the main cities that house up to 1.4 million Christian believers. Japan is a world reference in fashion. Many Japanese designers have reinterpreted the Japanese style of dress with revolutionary new designs. But no matter how much fashion we see in Japan, it is inevitable that its inhabitants continue to wear the characteristic costumes on special occasions. A good example is religious ceremonies, Japanese weddings, or even the tea ceremony, where participants are often dressed in Japanese kimonos. Every Japanese has a kimono and its lighter summer versions, the yukata, at home to attend the many festivals held each year. These colorful dresses, which offer only in the color palettes for men and women, are tied with a belt coat and obi, like a dressing gown, while being adorned with unique decorations and wooden clothes called geta. Geishas are traditional Japanese performers who dedicate their entire lives to studying in order to entertain the upper classes at their meetings and banquets. It has nothing to do with prostitution in Japan, as some people think, because geisha are artists who only entertain through music, dance or storytelling. Today, the number of geisha has decreased significantly, as it is a declining profession, with fewer and fewer girls wanting to dedicate themselves exclusively to it. However, there are still traditional schools where maikos, apprentice geisha, prepare to carry on this beautiful culture. To see authentic geisha in Kyoto and geisha in Tokyo, there are some recommended areas where you can watch them walking around. It is also possible to hire their entertainment services, although the price may be prohibitive for many travelers. Japan is not the only setting for many of the world's most famous films, but it is also full of great creations that have always accompanied us in film, television and literature. Many of the movies and cartoons we all grew up with were created in Japan. During your visit to this magnificent country, you will be able to see firsthand all those places and scenes of Japanese culture that you are sure to recognize from cartoons and comics. Japan has a highly developed film industry. However, it is not capable of producing American-style superproductions, so the vast majority of Japanese films are not known beyond the Asian continent. Japanese cinema is characterized by its animated films, the most famous of which are those of Studio Ghibli, with such well-known titles as My Neighbor Totoro, Spirited Away, Princess Mononoke, and The Walking Castle, among others. These are mainly children's movies from Japan, although they have many followers of all ages. The animated films of Studio Ghibli are considered part of the world-famous Japanese anime. Anime is the word used in this country for animated cartoons, which today is known to all as animation of Japanese origin. With a long history dating back to 1907, Japan was one of the first countries to create animated films. Today, there are thousands of stories and characters that are part of cartoon series and movies that are considered among the most famous Japanese things in the world. As expected, the Japanese are lovers of this audiovisual discipline and consume a lot of anime, which can be found in the many stores dedicated to its sale. If you are also an anime lover, you will find your paradise in Japan. Much simpler and with more history than anime is the Japanese manga, comics drawn in the style of Japan, which exist only in this country where it is revered. Along with Belgium and the United States, Japan is the main distributor of this type of comic, albeit with a very specific style. Today, it is a very important pillar of the Japanese publishing market, and many of its stories have also been adapted for the cinema. If you want to delve into Japanese manga, mangaka is a Japanese word used to describe a comic book creator in Japan. I hope you enjoyed this getaway, and I'll see you next Friday. Bye bye!